Make your motions for the record, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can I stand here, Your Honor?
You may, yes, sir. As long as Miss Julie can hear you.
Certainly.
All right.
You're okay. Your Honor, I actually have several brief motions. The first motion, Your Honor, would be in reference to the site visit that we're scheduled to do this morning. Now, as I understand it, Your Honor, we're going to approximately 6 locations. Defense would have an objection to 4 of those locations, Your Honor, for the following reasons. I believe that the state proposes to take us to the location where Ms. Flowers testified that she picked up an unidentified black male on the evening of December 6, 2014, and where she actually dropped off this black male, on the evening of December 6, 2014. Ms. Flowers did not identify that individual as Quentin tells us. Ms. Flowers actually testified that she did not recognize the individual at all. She spoke with him, picked him up, dropped him off, and there is no testimony that would tie Mr. Tellis to that, Your Honor. By doing that, we think it's prejudicial to Mr. Tellis in that it will allow the jury to infer or to speculate that in spite of her not identifying Mr. Tellis, that Mr. Tellis was in fact the person that she picked up on this evening. We believe that to be prejudicial to the defendant. We believe that because she did not identify Mr. Tellis, that the visit to those locations would be totally irrelevant to what we're discussing before this court, and for that reason we would lodge an objection to those 2 particular site visits. All right. Going forward, Your Honor, the 2 site visits related to Ms. Carrie Henson and Ms. Julia Chambers, I believe that's 1 site visit, Your Honor, because as I understand from the testimony and from my personal visit to these locations, this mother and daughter live in the same spot, so that would be 1 site visit, Your Honor. Our objection to that would be that since there has been no identification of Mr. Tellis and his travels to that area, to visit that site is irrelevant, Your Honor. And again, it will allow the jury to speculate and infer for some reason that has not been testified to in this court that Mr. Tellis was the individual that was actually dropped off at that location where Ms. Flowers apparently showed the ATF agents. For that reason, we would object to those site visits. Going forward, Your Honor, it is our understanding that we're going to go to the site. We're going to visit the site where Ms. Chambers ultimately was burned. We have no objection to that. We would object, however, to the site visit where the state proposes to recreate the scene on this particular occasion. This happened on December 6, 2014, Your Honor. There's been extensive testimony concerning the positioning of the vehicles, Your Honor, but there was also extensive testimony to particular noise levels that existed there on the scene of the accident. This is an event that played out over several hours, Your Honor, or at least for a term of about a half an hour to 45 minutes. There was testimony from first responders wherein they initially encountered Ms. Chambers, and then from that first encounter, there's testimony about additional first response vehicles arriving on the scene. There's been no testimony as to how the noise level would have been the same during the entire duration of their responding to Ms. Chambers. However, several, as I understand it and believe that there were several first responder vehicles, fire trucks that arrived over a different time period while all of this was going on. There was also testimony about witnesses walking around the scene. There was testimony about rubberneckers walking around the scene. There was testimony about other distractions that were happening at this time. The defense or the state proposes to try and recreate this situation, Your Honor. We do not believe that it's possible to recreate this situation or to recreate it substantially to be of any benefit to a jury who went out and witnessed this recreation. For that reason, we would object to that, Your Honor. Additionally, there were no pictures taken of any of the first responder vehicles as they were sitting there on the scene of this event, Your Honor. So we understand that there was a young lady, she was in trauma. The firemen were particularly concerned with putting out the fire and caring for Ms. Chambers. And for them to, and they've testified as to their recollection of it, but their recollection, we believe, Your Honor, will be faulty in regard to their repositioning the vehicles 4 years ago. For that reason, we would object to that, Your Honor. We would also refer the court to Gibbons v. State. In this case, Your Honor, the
You have a cite on that?
Yes, Your Honor, 618 Southern 2nd 1313. This case involved the court's consideration of photos that the state offered to actually go out and take of a particular crime scene, but at a later date. And the state, the court analyzed that while the court has discretion in admitting them, if the scene or if the photos proposed to be offered would be of particular benefit to the jury, the attempted recreation of it without some assurances that the conditions are substantially the same will be more prejudicial. That's basically the reason set out in that case, Your Honor. Although it dealt with photographic evidence, we would believe that the court could use that as guidance to entertain the motions currently before this court. Your Honor, the final objection, well, final two objections, Your Honor. On yesterday, the state mentioned calling a witness this morning, which I believe to be the wife of the individual that first responder, I believe Brandy Davis, talked about. If the court will recall, Mr. Davis testified that he saw an individual there near the fire trucks on the night of this incident and admonished him to leave. The individual basically ignored his commands, and Mr. Davis articulated to him that if he didn't leave, he would have a deputy to escort him from the scene. This individual was looking back toward the area where the car was. Finally, he leaves, and I believe Mr. Davis called someone who was further down the road and asked them to get his tag number. His tag number was actually recovered, we believe, and the state apparently ran that tag number, and this individual allegedly was identified. On yesterday, we received information that the wife of this individual is going to be called to testify here. Her testimony would be irrelevant, based totally on hearsay, Your Honor, and would have no value to a jury listening to it. Additionally, Your Honor, we've not been allowed up until yesterday any opportunity to try and speak with this witness. We're not interested really in speaking to her, Your Honor. We would like to speak to the individual there if in fact this individual was there and this is his wife who was being called upon to testify. For that basis, Your Honor, we would object. Additionally, we never received any disclosure of this purported information that was received back when this tag was allegedly run. We had some general conversations with the district attorney's office about this tag being run, but we've never received any disclosure of this information. As a matter of fact, until yesterday, we didn't even know this lady's name, other than she may be the wife of the individual who was allegedly on the scene that night. For that basis, we would object. Finally, Your Honor, there's a site visit as it relates to where these keys were found. Mr. Mills testified on yesterday that he collected these keys at 124 Main Street. 124 Main Street was The residence at the time, I believe, was Jerry King. However, Mr. Mills didn't take any pictures of where he found the keys. He took pictures of where Mr. King told him he found the keys. He testified that he didn't know how long Mr. King had these keys. He testified that he didn't know where the keys came from, except when he got to the residence, they were on the hood of a car parked in Mr. King's driveway. We believe that a site visit to a place where Mr. King allegedly found these keys and no one knows where they came from would be prejudicial. We believe that it's irrelevant and it lacks improper foundation, and for those reasons we object to that particular site visit as well.
Thank you. Your response by the state.
Judge, as far as I'm going to take, Jay's going to argue the motion on the Thelma Taylor. As far as the site visits
Jay's gonna
where
argue.
Ms.
Excuse me.
Flowers,
Excuse me. Jay's gonna argue what?
on Ms. Taylor,
Who?
the last witness that he wants to object to as far as the vehicle is concerned.
About the keys?
No, sir, before that.
Wife of the individual
Right.
who was unidentified.
That's correct.
All right, and that name is Tabor?
Taylor,
Taylor.
Thelma Taylor.
That's the first I've heard the name. All right, you may continue.
All right, they're objecting to us going to where Ms. Flowers indicated she picked up an individual and where she dropped him off, as well as the residence where the fire was located earlier in the evening, which is Ms. Chambers and her daughter Carrie Henson. It is certainly admissible evidence. This is a circumstantial evidence case, and the state is allowed to put on the circumstances that it believes tends to prove the defendant guilty in this case. And it is our argument to the court, and I certainly don't want to lay everything out right at this moment, but it is our argument that is extremely relevant that the individual in the car identified himself as a relative of Julia Chambers. Mr. Tellis is a relative of Julia Chambers. And it's going to be our argument that it is 100% relevant in this case. It's very relevant to our case. She has testified to where they were. The officers know as a part of their investigation, or Barry does as part of his investigation of this case, where it was located, and also the residences of Ms. Chambers and Ms. Henson are also relevant in this case due to the proximity to where his sister lives, which is what we contend is where he got the vehicle that night, which he admitted in the statements that he gave that he got the vehicle from his sisters. And it's in very close proximity to where the sister lives. So it is relevant to our case. Well, yeah, and obviously their home was where the court and fire department was that night prior to going out to Jessica's. The night site visit objection is, you know, I didn't bring any case law, but it's been my experiences with case law through the years.
Well, I'm not going to go ahead and argue. I'm not going to rule on that until I've had an opportunity to review the case that he cited. But go ahead.
The argument that is, Your Honor, the contention is, and the jury has been led to believe that Jessica was able to carry on conversations with folks left and right, and all these people coming in, and I think the state needs to be able to show the jury, and we're going to have the actual brush truck, we're going to have the actual pumper, and we're going to have the actual Pope rescue vehicle that were there on that evening positioned where they were located that night. And Daniel Cole, who's going to testify to all this, vividly remembers it. He'll testify to that, where everything was positioned. He's going to testify to where Jessica was laying. And there certainly is a foundation, and it certainly is relevant evidence. The recreation, if that's what you want to call it, is that. But we're recreating the noises from the actual vehicles that were there that night, and we certainly contend that that is relevant. And I'll let Mr. Hale tell the court about Ms. Thelma Taylor.
Mr. Hale?
Our first other site visit was the location of the keys. The state contends that that is already in evidence. Certainly, Investigator Mills has already identified where the keys were found. That is already in evidence. Certainly, we feel like that is relevant for the jury to hear. Your Honor, in regards to this other witness, in verbal communication, after the first, speak quiet, after the first trial, we actually informed them that we had actually identified that individual. Obviously, it came into play, unbeknownst to us, a little bit heavier than we anticipated. After that trial, Mr. Rowlett went back on his slideshow and added a slide in regarding this individual. I did turn that slideshow over to the defense. I've pulled that slide from that slideshow. I would like to offer this slide into evidence for the purposes of this hearing only.
All right. Pass it to counsel, please. All right, may I see it, please? All right, and when was this, what date was this given to the defense?
Turned over when we were handling the motion hearings in Hernando.
Help me with a date.
About 3
I
weeks
have
ago.
motion hearings in Hernando every day.
About a month ago, 3 weeks ago, when were we handling this here?
Your Honor, I believe the motion hearing was when we were in Hernando, it was a couple of weeks ago, when we were arguing the witness, Your Honor, the lineup issue.
All right.
I believe that was the day.
13th, August, September. Can we agree on that? It's on September the 13th?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may continue. You may mark it.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, that night, Daniel Cole received information from some of the first responders that there was a suspicious male, as we've already heard from the testimony of Will Turner today. They did call down and get a tag number. I believe it was on a white Yukon. The tag actually came back to a Thelma Taylor, who also lived on Old Highway 51. Miss Taylor is the wife of Willie Taylor. We attempted to make contact. We're able to Mr. Willie Taylor is an over-the-road trucker. He is out of town currently. However, we were able to talk to him. We're able to make contact with his wife, who is under subpoena for this trial. His wife advised us that she was home with a 3-month-old grandson. She has a daughter that lives in Courtney Village, which is right next to the burn site, is where those houses are right prior to getting to Heron Road to the burn site. She could not reach her daughter on that evening. She heard that there was a helicopter in Cortland, and she told her husband to go check on it. He drives down there. He's trying to look around to see who it is, and which I would not put that in because that's certainly his testimony, but she's going to testify that she actually sent her husband to check on her daughter. Her husband drove down there. She later found out that police had run the tag on her vehicle, identified her husband. She said her husband later returned home and her daughter was fine. The main thing she would testify to is that the sirens and the helicopter, all that was already going on when her husband left the house to go check on the daughter. That would be the limited extent of her testimony.
All right.
And that is to address the suspicious individual that we listened to in the last trial.
Anything further,
No, sir, Your Honor.
Mr. Peters?
Yes, Your Honor, as to this slide, this is not a disclosure, Your Honor. It's her, if we're gonna say that we can call any witness listed in this 102-page disclosure, at trial without giving the defense any opportunity to object to it, I think we're probably gonna go through there and pull out some additional witnesses that we like to. They're gonna use this as a closure. The registration was to Thelma Taylor. There's no disclosure here as to what Ms. Taylor may testify to at this trial, that she will even be called as a witness at this trial. It says that the driver, Willie Taylor, was confronted at the scene driving a white Yukon. There's been no disclosure of Ms. Taylor, what she would testify to, just her name. And I don't think that that's a disclosure as required by the rule for witness testimony, Your Honor. And I will limit my response to that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Taylor?
Your Honor, I would just note that the very last sentence of that says he was down there looking for his daughter.
When was the individual identified who was down there? I mean, when was the tag run, and when was the identification made?
Your Honor, the tag was run back that night. That information was turned over to the Sheriff's Department. Ultimately, that information ended up in Mr. Rowlett's hands. It did not become pertinent to us until he became an issue in the first trial, and that's when we began to run down Willie Taylor. Certainly, we did make contact in all candor to the court. We did turn that information over to Mr. Rowlett's slides on the 13th of this month.
Well, I'm looking for, so you how long did you have the individual identified? That's what I'm looking at. Was the release of the information timely, or was it not? I mean, I think that's what his objection is.
Your Honor, I will say Mr. Willie Taylor was identified he was identified that night or the next day, December 6, 2014. Like I said, he did not become of importance to us to this trial until after the first trial.
All right. All right, the court is going to overrule the motion as to item number 1, that is, as to the pickup of the location is to the pickup of the unidentified black male. The court will ask him just to hold it down a little bit in there, please. As to the same as to item 2, which involves the drop-off location of the black male, the court will overrule that motion on that also. The court will overrule the number 3 objection, that is, as to the home of Terry Henson and Julia Chambers. I think that's been well discussed, and the court will overrule also that part of the motion. Recreating the scene, the court will reserve ruling on that until I have had opportunity to review the authority cited by counsel. I will also take under advisement item number 5, which was the identification of the wife of the unidentified individual at the time who came to the scene and was asked to leave, that being, I'm told today, a witness named Thelma Taylor. I'll take that under advisement. And certainly as to the site visit, as to the location of the keys that the witness testified he saw on the side of the road, court's going to overrule that portion of that objection. All right. All right, is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
All right.
We are, Your Honor.
All right.
And Your Honor, just for the court's guidance, I know the last time we did this, the court asked us to briefly go through the description of the locations with Detective Thompson to save time on the field trips. So we'll do that briefly and then we'll depart.
All right, thank you. All right, bring the jury in, please. Good morning. I understand you all had a very good evening meal. Am I correct? Yes, sir. I understand that, yeah. I understand that you all's comforts were attended to promptly by our people here in Panola County. That's good. I would have to ask you again, did anyone approach you about this case or try to talk with you about it, or have you discussed this case among yourselves? Now, I assume your answer is they have not. None has been reported to you. Okay, very well. So, all right, Mr. Hale, you may call your next witness, sir.
State call the witness, Mary Thompson.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give involving this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Would you state your name, please?
Barry Thompson,
And Mr. Thompson, where are you currently employed?
Panola County Sheriff's Department.
In what capacity are you currently employed with the Sheriff's Department?
I'm third in command, major over the investigative division.
And were you major over the investigative division on December the 6th of 2014?
Yes, sir.
And on December the 6th of 2014, excuse me, you actually reside near the Cortland community, is that correct?
Yes, sir. My address is actually a Cortland address. I do.
Okay. And were you at your residence on the night of December 6, 2014?
No, sir, I was not.
Were you out of town?
I was.
And did you receive some calls regarding things that were going on December 6, 2014?
Yes.
And did you stay in communication with Daniel Cole and other individuals that night?
I did. I was constantly on the phone with either Lieutenant Dixon, Sheriff Darby, Daniel Cole, or other investigators.
And when you arrived back in town the next day on Sunday, December 7th, did you in fact visit the crime scene?
I believe we went out to the crime scene that day, but we had a meeting at the sheriff's office. You were either there or contacted, and from that we set up a larger meeting to start Monday.
Okay. And you had numerous agencies responding to help?
Yes, sir. Starting that Monday and through that next week, we began to get offers and help from the ATF, MBI, FBI, U.S. Department of Justice, and various other federal and state agencies.
And we're going to go over your involvement in this investigation later. However, you do understand that we are going to take what we call a field trip or some site visits to some of these key pertinent places.
Yes, sir.
Are you, in fact, being a resident of that area, are you familiar with these pertinent places?
Yes, sir, very much so.
I'm going to show you an aerial photograph. Can you identify this aerial photograph?
Yes, sir. That is an aerial photograph of basically the town of Cortland, the crime scene itself, which is somewhat southwest of Cortland, and then up to the store, M&M Grocery, that will come into play that is north of Cortland.
Does this particular aerial map cover all the areas that we plan to go on site visits?
It does.
And are some of those areas actually already marked on this map?
They are.
Your Honor, I would ask that this map be offered and received as an exhibit.
No objection, Your Honor.
Being no objection, it'll be marked and admitted.
Your Honor, can Major Thompson step down?
Yes, sir. You may. It's gonna be hard to see. You're fine.
Major Thompson, when we conduct the site visits, you said this is an aerial map of what?
This is an aerial map of the Cortland community. It's going to cover the basically the town of Cortland plus outlying areas from that.
And is one of those outlying areas where Jessica Chambers was found?
Yes, sir. It'd be denoted on here is the crime scene, but that'll be the actual location where she was recovered.
And can you show, we're gonna hear a lot about Highway 51. Can you come in and point to where Highway 51 is on this map?
Yes, this will be United States Highway 51, be the widest part of this that you see here.
We're also gonna hear about Main Street in Cortland. We need to note where Main Street in Cortland is.
Main Street is gonna break off from Highway 51 here, go to here, which this is the fire station, and then on down to the crime scene.
And I believe they mentioned a split in Main Street to where it turns in either Wells or Heron Road. Is that correct?
Yes. After you pass Courtney Village here on Main Street, it's gonna turn into what is Heron Road that goes back out of somewhat southwest out of the town of Courtney.
And would that be the common route from the crime scene to the residence of Quentin Tellis or M&M Grocery?
Yes.
Now, I know it's already marked there, but will you show them where the crime scene is on Heron Road?
It'll be this red dot here. It's hard to see because this map was taken when it was green, but it's actually right here at this red dot.
And moving down Heron Road onto Main Street, which is Main Street and Heron Road, the jury's gonna see it's pretty much the same road, is it not?
Yes, sir. It just turns in, and once it leaves the town of Courtland, it turns into a county road.
And on that road headed back toward Highway 51, do we have the location of the keys?
Yes, sir. It's right here at this next red dot.
And also at the location of the keys, are you going to denote the location of Sherry Flowers' home at the time, 74 Main Street?
I will. It'll be directly across the street.
And how about the residence of Jerry King?
I think it's 2 more houses up. I think it's 124 Main Street, maybe.
Are you going to be able to point that out for the jury from there?
Yes, sir. I will.
Okay. And there's also an area that we're going to visit where Sherry Flowers has stated that she picked up an individual. Did she in fact tell investigators where she picked up that individual?
She did give an approximate location, and near she could remember is where she had picked him up on Main Street.
And did she show them that location?
She did.
And did they take down the latitude and longitude coordinates?
They did.
And as of late last week, I know we've had some rain, has there been a mark in the road where that latitude longitude coordinate is?
Those coordinates were shot and a mark was placed at the approximate location she had given investigators.
And would you show the jury where that approximate location is from moving from the Keys towards Cortland?
The road's going to make a big curve here. This being the fire station is going to be approximately in this area right in here.
And I believe she's already testified that she took the individual, what we call up the hill.
Yes, that'll be going across the railroad tracks up to Highway 51.
And would you depict that route for the jury?
She's going to be leaving the fire station. This wide thing you see, it looks like a highway, are actually the railroad tracks. You're going to cross. This comes up a hill to a stop sign here at Highway 51.
And she's also denoted the area where she dropped this individual off being, I don't know if you call it intersection of old 51 and new 51.
It is the intersection. I call it the mouth of the opening of the intersection, kind of a wide spot. It's hard to see because of the foliage on this map. That's actually going to be in this wide, kind of lighter spot right here.
And just so the jury knows, old 51 and new 51, explain to them what I'm referring to when I say that.
Old Highway 51 is before they straightened the road out, before they paved it. And this is old Highway 51 that makes a loop behind this church, in front of the post office, and back to Highway 51. It's just a short, kind of curving road that makes a
Approximately
loop.
how long is old Highway 51?
3/4 of a mile, maybe.
Okay. On old Highway 51, do we have the residence of Julia Chambers?
Yes.
And can you point that residence out for the jury?
It'll be this double wide trailer here with the green roof on it.
And in the site visit, we're going to walk from what you call the mouth of old highway, new Highway 51, up to Julia Chambers' residence.
Yes, they'll be going south to north, walking up to her residence.
We're also going to move across to an area that will become significant, being the residence of Shanika Williams, or Ray Gann. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Who is Shanika Williams?
It's Quentin Tellis' sister.
And where does she live?
It'll be this red dot on top of this structure here.
And is that a particular subdivision or neighborhood?
That's Otto Sanford subdivision.
Finally, are we going to move to the area of the store and the residence of Quentin Tellis?
Yes, sir. The store is north of Quentin Tellis' residence and somewhat west. It's across the street, and his house is just a little bit south. You can see them both from each location.
And we're going to also walk over to Quentin Tellis' residence from the store.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to identify some points at that residence.
Yes, sir.
And then we're going to finally walk to an area just below his residence, is that correct? That becomes significant in an FBI interview.
We will. It's this driveway just south of his residence. It goes back, kind of sweeping back to a residence. It's pretty far off the road, but we won't go that far. It's just a short distance behind his residence.
And at each of these locations, are we going to allow the jury to get out and get a good feel of where we are?
Hopefully, weather permitting, yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I believe we're going to have direct and cross on the scene. At this time, we're ready to depart for the site visits.
All right. Mr. Peterson?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right.
No questions at this time.
No questions at this time, all right? How long is it going to take to prepare the vans and?
Your Honor, everything's in line. We're ready.
All right.
Hopefully, I just had a minute to have to go before we get her items in order.
All right.
I think we're ready to
Okay,
go.
here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to put the jury back in their room for a moment and let Miss Julie get all of her stuff packed up. If you all will help her do that
Yes.
into your van so that she can get to the scene first and set up. Mr. Peterson, you and the defense okay with Miss Julie riding out there with the first car, which is the major here, so she can get her stuff set up and everything?
No objection to that.
All right, very well. Then we'll do it that way. And then as soon as she gets set up and y'all get out there, then I want the jury to be escorted out to the vans.
Yes, you're like I said, I think everything is in
And
line.
I'm going to ask that the court stay in order until such time as the jury's completely loaded in their vans. All right?
Your Honor, may I release the media where they can get their vans in order to embark with us?
That'll be fine.
Thanks, sir. Media guys, like I said, y'all will just line up at this position right here. Mr. Shannon, gonna be the flag, we stop like that.